All right. Welcome to the Gateway API meeting for October 13th in California, anyways. And it's good to have everyone here. Fairly light agenda, fairly light attendance today. So this may be a shorter meeting, but I've said that bit before and been entirely wrong. So we'll see what happens here. Um, and just a reminder, this Kubernetes contributor meeting, Kubernetes community meeting, which means we abide by the code of conduct. It just means please be nice to each other. Since we're using Zoom, recommend using Zoom's raise hand feature. That just makes sure that everyone gets a chance to say what they want to say. And this is an open agenda. I'll drop the link in Zoom chat for anyone who may not have it, but I think anyone should be able to edit and add things to this agenda as needed. And I think we've got a fairly light one today, so great time to add anything else that you might want to discuss. But with that, let me jump right in and talk a little bit about this one, which I think we've already discussed in this meeting. This will be repetitive for folks who were at the morning meeting or at the earlier meeting last week. So I won't go into too much of the details here, but I think the very big change that we are discussing in this release is basically, in addition to the stable releases that we have on a relatively regular cadence, the idea would be to have monthly releases for experimental channel that allow us to iterate a bit more quickly on experimental prototypes, etc., and basically enable us to make changes within experimental channel outside of stable releases, and maybe more importantly, allow us to get changes into Gateway API, um, in a less rigid process than we had before, where currently what we have been doing is having very fixed timelines for release scoping, and then basically agreeing on the enhancement design and then actually making the API changes and implementing them. This shifts that significantly and it takes individual features out of that, and they become part of a stable release when they're ready. But experimental releases are basically just pointing at main branch at that point in time. And yeah, so I'm doing a very poor job at describing this because although I am excited about this idea, a lot of, I mean, this specific doc was written by Flynn, and so yeah, I'll leave it there. Candace, I think you have some comments, so I'll hand it off to you.
Well, the first comment that I had, thank you, is that are we really going forward with all of this? These are a lot of changes, and normally we wouldn't make this many changes without a little bit more discussion on it.
Yeah.
I feel like this
I think
hasn't had a lot of discussion.
I
And
think yeah, sorry, you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think part of the problem here is that this has been come as a result of a bunch of discussion. It's just been discussion amongst Rob and Flynn and Shane and I, because we've been like thinking about the problem of how to increase our feature velocity while still maintaining safety around experimental channel. Right now, experimental channel is not safe. Like it is 100% not safe. Once you install experimental channel on a cluster, you can never go back. Like it is not safe to ever go from experimental back to standard, because we might need to make breaking changes. The fact that that makes it so unsafe means that we're extremely reluctant to make breaking changes, which means that we're extremely reluctant to add features that we're not 100% sure about. It's kind of like at the moment, experimental is standard with like a few less steps. And so like that is one of the things that has really slowed us down. I know, Candace, that getting something into experimental is like can be a bewildering and nightmarish ordeal at the moment. And what we're hoping to do with a lot of these changes is to make it so that it's easier to get things into experimental. But for it to be easier to get things in experimental, it needs to be safer. And we need to be able to like iterate and release a bit faster so that people can actually try these things out a bit quicker. So that's where all of this has come from, right? Like and the reason why we're looking at a lot of changes all at once is that some of these changes, once you do them, a bunch of other stuff doesn't make sense anymore. Like if you start doing monthly releases for experimental, if we started doing only that in this release, then having the same release cadence that we had before doesn't make any sense anymore, right? And so like the and once you start doing, once you start saying, hey, main always has to be shippable because we're doing monthly releases, and then that sort of implies, well, what does a minor release actually mean? And the minor release then becomes it's whatever is ready, like it's whatever is ready right when we get to the point of cutting the release. The last thing that we're trying to do with all of this is to like reduce the load a bit on the reviewers and try and spread out the work a bit more. Right now, like as it stands, Rob, Shane, and I, when it comes time to any one of the deadlines, all of us are basically doing nothing other than Gateway API for that week because we are the gateway. We are the only people that can approve all this stuff. We have to keep an eye on everything, even if we don't approve it. And so we really want to be able to empower people to be able to make changes that we don't have to personally oversee every single one of them. But we can't do that when the changes to experimental are like so dangerous. And so we can't, like right now we want to get out of the way, right? Like we want to be able to be like, this is a good idea, please go and do that. And then if someone makes a mistake, including us, then we want to be able to fix that mistake without needing like a huge deal to happen. And we can't do that with the current thing. Like we know that because we've been doing the current method for years and we know all the ways that it doesn't work. So I 100% agree that this is a lot of change all at once, but like this is a lot of change all at once that is sort of designed to address the problems we know we have today. Like I completely get that like it seems like it's coming out of nowhere and that there's a lot of stuff in this document, but like most of the things that are in this document are things that we as the maintainers of this have been worried about for a really long time. And so this is just where we're like, once we started changing enough things, we were like, well, we're changing enough things now that it's better to just change everything at once. Right. And I know that sucks for us to change everything at once, but it's better to just get all the change out of the way and then be in a place where we can iterate a bit quicker and where we can, where we can, where we can speed up a bit, hopefully, and try and achieve the difficult feat of speeding up while making it more safe. Does that background help at all, Candace?
Well, it helps to understand that at least there was a discussion amongst the maintainers about all the different things that would change. But are you guys, I mean, who's going to do all these changes? Those are not things that are going to happen on their own. Are you guys
No,
now going to become the ones who make all these release changes instead of the ones who approve the PRs for these that go into the release changes?
You're completely right. Nothing comes for free. This is a lot of work. I can't pretend to say that this is going to be easy or fast. What I'll say is, this past release, we had Shane volunteer to be a release lead, and that was a good reminder of how much work is involved. This time around, we have actually had 2 volunteers to be release leads. So that would be Flynn and Becca will be trying to help out and lead this next release forward. So 2 people, theoretically better than 1. And so hopefully that allows us to, incorporate some of these changes in a more timely fashion. Um, despite the overwhelming nature of what this, moving to monthly releases, I think that the actual changes are primarily around documentation and validation. And so it may not be as bad to actually implement this, but I don't want to underestimate anything like this. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And I am very appreciative in advance of the people that are volunteering to take this on. Um, I do just want to run back a little bit and share, my perspective on why I think this is important. And it's, I've been involved. It was my idea to do this release scoping thing to begin with. A lot of the current release process is my idea. It's been collaborative for sure, but I will take responsibility for the poor outcomes here. There were things that went better for sure, but some of the things that have really bugged me about this process have been that if you look at the release scoping for 1.2, which was the one leading this discussion, I guess, you can see that there were some very legitimate, uh, issues like cores that we just said, no, we don't have enough time, we can't fit it in, right? Uh, that's a real shame, right? We had implementations that wanted this feature. We had everything, right? We had everything that should qualify to get a feature in Gateway API. We just said, no, we don't have the time. And that was, that made sense in the framework we were working within, but it's really unfortunate. And then you can go to the 1.3 scoping effort, and you can see, hey, we tried this in 1.2, it didn't make the scope. So we're trying it again in 1.3, it also didn't make the scope, right? I mean, that's a really awful experience for contributors that are trying to help. And I would rather, yeah, I would rather do what we can here to, I think about this one too, the gRPC retries. This is another one that was proposed in the previous cycle. And again, 2 cycles in a row where it didn't make it across the line, just because it wasn't sufficiently popular. Yeah, so that is, I guess, one of my concerns here, and I'm hoping we can really help address these problems. I know that, any change will introduce problems of their own, but I would rather those problems be tied to listen, there's not enough implementations that can support your feature right now, and that's an easier thing to understand than what we have been doing in the past. So yeah, that's my limited view of the world, but open to feedback and ideas for what we can be doing better.
So yeah, I think so I think the last thing that I wanted to mention was that it seemed like I did have a very brief look, Candace, at some of your comments on the proposal, and I felt like one of the things that seemed to be a sticking point was the if something doesn't move forward in 6 months, then it'll be removed. That is intended to try and avoid things being in perma experimental without anyone working on them. So like moving forward here, we have left that definition very purposefully vague, because like we want basically, the requirement is really, if the feature is not being worked on and it goes stale, then it may end up getting removed, with the intent being that, hey, if you want to propose something moves forward, then it's kind of on you to keep it moving forward. So if you need to, as you made a really good point about, hey, what happens if someone needs to take a break for a bit? There's nothing wrong with taking a break, but like that's something then that you need to manage, in that you either need to organize someone to keep it moving forward while you're away, or you need to say, hey, I am taking a break. I will be looking at this when I get for this long. I will be looking at this when I get back. Can you please can I please have an exception to the staleness rule? Right? Like that's okay to ask for, right? Like, and if someone comes to us and says, hey, something's come up, I'm going to be, I've had a family emergency, I'm going to be offline for 6 months. I don't have time to hand this over to someone else to pick up, then like, sure, like there's no problems with us doing that. As long as we write it down somewhere and it's clear that that's what's happened, right? Like the intent here is to have it so that people can't show up, drop a feature into experimental, implement it in some implementation somewhere and be happy because it's in experimental, and then disappear and never push it to standard, right? And so, that's the sort of thing that we're trying to avoid here, that things don't eventually move forward to standard. We're not trying to penalize people for having to take some time off, or for, something coming up, right? Like it's, the intent here is for people who are to avoid the possibility of having features drop in and then never move forward. Rob knows in great detail how much it can suck to try and move people away from a beta API onto a GA one when they have been on that beta API for many years, right? That was what happened with Ingress V1 Beta 1, and Ingress V1 Beta 1 to V1 had API changes that were painful for people, and so they didn't want to move. They were better, but people didn't want to move. And so if you don't, you got to have the carrot and the stick, right? Like, and so, the when we're doing these sort of changes, the carrot is your feature gets in, but the stick is if you don't move your feature to standard, then it's going to go away. And so that's what we're really aiming to do here. Like, and again, we're specifically writing this process to have some wiggle room, because you don't really know how it's going to go yet, right? Like, so maybe we're going to change our mind about that. Maybe we're going to like find that it doesn't work, but we'd rather write down and try something than continue doing something that is clearly not working. Like, I know that Rob, Shane, and I have all had a pretty tough release this after release. This last release was actually a really big one. It didn't seem like we actually got we didn't get all the features in we wanted, but even so, is one of the biggest releases we've ever had for Gateway API. And I would prefer us to be doing smaller releases more often, and sort of leaving it up to implementations how fast they pick up those releases. But and I think there's definitely a discussion to be had about how much effort it is from implementations to actually pick up these changes. We're just really trying to make it so that we can have more things more quickly, and that's the sort of the real goal here. So sorry, Candace, I hope you don't feel like I've been picking on you, but you asked, and so and you had a lot of really great feedback on that document, and so I really wanted to make sure that we address that feedback, sort of on the record here. Has that answered at least some of your questions here?
Yeah, I have like individual questions about every part of that of the release changes document.
I mean, I think we don't have anything else on the agenda, so I think it's probably worth spending some time to actually go through them here while you got Rob and I here. So, Rob, you're driving, can you pull up the release changes doc?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Let's run through. Are there specific comments, Candace, you want to?
So we're only going to have 2 people working on all of these changes for the first monthly release. Is that right?
No, so
I mean,
we've got Flynn and Becca and Shane and Rob and I.
Okay.
So it won't just be them. There's a bunch of docs changes that we will need to make this. I've already started on some of them. I made some changes to the GEP template. I made some changes to the GEP release, to the GEP process doc, to prepare for these changes. And so some of the stuff about the number of implementations and the fact that moving to provisional now requires some things, and then moving to experimental has more requirements than it used to. So some of the stuff is actually already done, but as Rob said, a lot of it is documentation and process changes that are, more easily achievable than like a full API change.
Okay.
Yep. Rob, you were answering there. Is there anything else you wanted to?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, it's like anything in Gateway API, right? We've had someone volunteer to help out with helping with validating admission policy changes, which I really appreciate. You know, this is whoever is available can help here. This is not trying to be exclusive. Um, you know, I would say broadly, this set of release changes is quite the opposite of trying to be exclusive. It's trying to make it easier to get things into Gateway API with the you know, counterpoint to that, that it's also going to be easier for things to, you know, drop from Gateway API. But trying to trying to make it easier to get things in, and I hope that's exciting for enough people that they can, you know, that the combined effort of this community can help us move to this new model.
Yeah, so I think
Candace, I think this comment in particular, your basic, I think your concern is basically about the automatic removal of gaps. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the new role of release police, like who's going to be policing all of these changes. I can see something happen where, like, for some GEPs, we don't notice, and it's been like 5 months since somebody picked it up. But for other GEPs, it's like as soon as that 3-month mark hits, someone's going to say, "Hey, the 3-month mark hit. The 3-month mark has been hit on this one. Let's just drop it."
Yeah.
You know, based on, so who's the release police? Who gets to say who's going
That
to do that?
One, that's a great name. I like Release Please. I mean, we should not have, but great. You know, uh, what I would say is you know, there's some precedence for this in upstream Kubernetes where every API has basically an end date of, you know, it was marked beta in X, you know, X release, which is this year, this month, this day. That means that if it does not move forward, it should be removed in Y release, you know, and there's some automation around that, right? And that is required as you're adding the API, that you also have to write in the end date as you're adding the API. Like, this is going away on this date by default, unless I keep on moving. You know, I'll be, you know, to be fair, that still requires someone to actually remove it. But if we do it correctly, it is find all that, you know, all end dates that have expired or are expiring in the next month and remove or file
I
issue or
mean,
whatever, right?
yeah, if we put that stuff in the get metadata YAMLs, then then it's possible to build tooling on that because we have a schema for get metadata YAMLs. We can, you know, we can ingest all of those things and you know, and write a tool and have a tool that will flag things for us.
Yeah, sure.
Ricardo has already used that the YAMLs to automate the talk generation. Thank you for that, Ricardo.
Yeah, big plus
really
one.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I 100% agree that it is a thing that we need to be concerned about, and it is also a thing that we need to spend time and effort on making sure we get right. I agree that it would be ideal to not have release police, right? Like it should be a bot that does that, right? Like it should be a bot that says, hey, you got this one is due to expire in a month. Someone needs to have a look at that. And then, hey, these ones have expired. Someone needs to do something about that. I don't think that it should by automatically here. The automatically part is not that there will be a bot that actually just opens a PR and actually removes things. It will be unless someone does something, someone needs, like, now someone will need to go and remove it. And it means that the default is to remove things that get stale, not to sort of have a discussion about whether or not we should remove things.
Yeah.
Is that it's not, yeah, I think that's the key distinction here, is that, you know, part of this new process is that we're agreeing, hey, we really don't want things to get stale. You know, we should default to removing things that get stale. and rather than sort of letting them sit around and be like, oh, what are we going to do about this?
It's a bit arbitrary. Like if you read on after the automatically part, and it's talking about what can reset the timer. A lot of different things can reset the timer, for which it's difficult to actually automate a bot.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't, to be honest, I really think that the only bots that we're talking about here is a bot that watches the get YAML files and says, hey, someone should look at this. That's the only automation we're talking about here. Now, I think that it's pretty reasonable that we say to people, hey, if you're updating the get YAML anyway, you bump this change, and then part of the PR review is that we're reviewing, hey, yeah, it's okay to move this forward by 6 months from today because someone changed it. And so that's the idea, is every time you change anything associated with a GEP, you twiddle that field, right? Like, yes, to start with, that'll be manual and easy to forget, but like we just need to remind people to do that, right? Like maybe we can automate that in another way later, but it's better to start with a manual process that we then figure out a way to automate than not. Ricardo?
I can't hear Ricardo. It may
Yeah,
just
I
be
think you're
me.
muted. You're like
You're not muted anymore?
You're not Zoom muted, but your microphone locally muted, probably.
Yeah. Still the same.
Yeah. That was a Zoom on Linux.
Yes.
Hands in the air.
Let me keep on running. I think Candace, you left a couple. And anyone else who wants to talk, like
Does it work now?
yeah,
Yes,
it
that's
does.
better.
It does.
Hold on. I can't hear you now, but that's because of my. Okay, cool. So I was just gonna say that maybe we need to think on the how later, but it would be something just like as on Kubernetes, you keep the issue of the gap open, and you have a bot that just gets the issue and goes to the gap and see where was the latest commit of that file, That's done. Because sometimes, like listener set, we just have the we did some update on listener set recently, which was stuck, but then we figured out that we needed to fix something. So okay, we just bump it up. I would say that maybe it's better than looking into commits that just looking into gaps that are really stuck because they don't have any commit anything,
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about things that are experimental but still clearly moving forward. It's the things that get stuck in experimental and just never are stale and never touched.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I think we need to be automatically removing. Yeah. Sorry, Candace.
Yeah, if we're done talking about that point, I actually had an earlier point in this doc about the requirement to get 3 implementations to agree that they'll actually support it, or 2 if it's a mesh feature. Why
Yep.
why the difference?
So I think Flynn actually did put a good comment here. Currently, we have 30 north-south implementations and 4 mesh implementations. So, like 3 mesh implementations is effectively unanimity. Everyone needs to agree. 3 north-south implementations is like, there is some interest. And so that's the reason for the difference at the moment, is that, right now, like getting 3 mesh implementations is almost the same as forcing everyone to agree. And so that's the only reason that number is 1 less. It still needs to be more than 1, right? Because we don't want 1 implementation to just be able to like, hey, we're going to do this, and you can all go, hang. But yeah, having the same number is just not practical because of the differing numbers.
I think more importantly, it's the stage at which you need to have 3 implementations say agree, because we used to not have to have that until we moved to standard. We weren't required to have that in the experimental phase.
Yep.
I feel like this is going to cause a lot more problems, especially if it's a new person, a new contributor coming in. wants to add something. They don't know anybody here. It'd be very discouraging for them to try to actually figure out, which 3 implementations should I talk to.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we want to. I think we need a better, more generic way to, submit feature ideas in a forum that allows implementations to come along and say, yeah, I want to support this, or I want to support that, or whatever that is, and sign me up. So in the past, what we had is we had GitHub discussions, and people could upvote, but people upvoted and they had to do it very carefully because only the top N proposals could get through, right? So you wouldn't upvote everything. You'd upvote the ones that you cared about the most. Whereas, like, if you look back at some of the examples I showed, like gRPC route timeouts, I can imagine anyone who supports gRPC route wants that too, but they may have wanted something else more. But if they can just say, yeah, I'll support this, that's great. So I don't want the author of implementation, the author of a GEP to have to, know everyone at every, implementation under the sun. That's not productive.
Yep.
What I would like to avoid is this time we had one enhancement in particular get through entirely on the upvotes of one vendor, entirely representing one implementation, and that ended up going nowhere, maybe a month or 2 in, because we realized, hey, no one else can support this, but we'd already wasted the slot, right? And
Yep.
so this is basically trying to show, yes, I have a viable path to get this thing out of experimental channel.
Yep.
It's trying to avoid the pain of something that gets into experimental and then we have to pull it out because there's not enough support at that point.
Yeah. So I think again, this is one of the things where the changes that we're making to the gateways for the GEP stages is really important, right? Like one of the things that I want to see us doing more is like saying, hey, like you want a feature, make a provisional GEP. The bar for provisional GEPs is kept lower, right? Like a provisional GEP is the who, what, and why, not the how. And so like it should be much easier to merge PRs that are provisional, which gets the discussion started and make sure that people know that you're interested in like pushing this feature forward. But the reason to add this as a requirement on experimental is it allows us to say, hey, this PR is open, the API design is great, but we can't merge this thing to experimental until we have 3 implementations that have commented on the PR or on the GEP or something like that. We have some evidence somewhere that there are at least 3 implementations that are implemented that are interested in trying this out in experimental. Like I think that right today, like there's almost certainly like 2 implementations. There are 2 implementations that basically implement every feature as soon as it moves into experimental. So like you shouldn't be too hard for even new people to the community to put something in Slack and say, hey, I've got this new feature. It's the experimental PR has been here and is like, has been reviewed already. I just need a couple more I just need some implementations to say they're interested. Is anybody interested, please? And that really should be all it takes, because again, as Rob says, most of the time, these features are things that all the implementations do want. It's just that they haven't had time to do most of the time, it's that they haven't had time to do the API work and the design work to actually build the thing themselves. gRPC retries, timeouts, a bunch of other stuff like that are sort of great examples here where it's not that nobody it's not that people don't want to do them, it's that they don't have the time to actually do the upstream work to make it happen. But saying, hey, I'll implement this once you get it into experimental is way less work than I will review a PR for you. And so that's the intent here, is to sort of make it so that there are different roles for the thing to move to experimental. Like part of the other thing for experimental is you need to have someone else who's already in the community sort of sign up to say like, hey, I'm going to help you with this. And that the intent here is to help people find a community mentor to help them navigate this, and so that you can go and have someone who you can say, as a new contributor, you can say, hey, which implementation should I ask to do this? You know, like you've been around for a while, like, you know, who should I ask? You know, and so to make it, to give people like a mentor so that it's not just shouting into the void. You know, like, and so the yeah, so that's one of the reasons I've been making a bunch of these changes to the get process to add to more clearly define the sort of the, you know, there's a list of things in the get get process of the get overview page. Hang on, Rob, let me drop the get overview page in the chat, and then maybe if you could pop that open. You know, I've updated the things here with like here's with the flowchart now has yeah, great. Yeah, the flowchart now has what you need to do for each stage. And then the extra things are in the descriptions. If you go down to I think it's the step 3 provisional is the first one. Yeah. So you need, like, there's a bullet list down the bottom of things that you need to have happened for each stage. So the provisional just needs you do make a get PR. That's the only thing that you need to move something to provisional. And then implementable, if you scroll down a bit more, Rob, this is the one where, this is sort of, this moves something to roughly experimental. But like, this is the one where you need to get people to sign up for it, because this is the one where you're doing the API design, right? Like, implementable is you've done the API design, you've merged the API design, you haven't merged the actual API Go changes yet. So this is the, hey, we've got the design locked in stage. And then experimental is when you actually make the API changes. And the reason those are separate is a lot of the time what we have found is implementable is you only have a get doc, and then when you actually make the API changes and people can start pulling main and actually trying to implement it, a lot of the time you find that you've made problems in the API design in the get doc. But the idea here is to be like, you need at least two implementations to say that they're interested in in implementing it in experimental. And I think it's 2 there. I'm not sure if we might need to update that to 3. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I did these changes before we agreed on the other.
I mean,
changes.
at least 2 is still accurate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
And at least one shepherd, right? Like, so you need a shepherd. You need someone else to sign up to help you as a feature owner. And and then the last thing obviously is a get PR. And so like, and then and then actually experimental is you make the changes to the Go types, you write down the graduation criteria for standard, you define feature names, and you have the probationary period set. And so that's where the probationary period is this is how long you've got. And then that means that once that probationary period is set, that is if you don't make any changes period, right? Like, if nothing else happens, then it'll be removed. As long as you keep doing stuff, then it's fine to bump that probationary period every PR. It's yeah. Hi, Alan.
I think that may have been accidental.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a bit more stuff there. Some of this may need updating, but like, this is already me sort of trying to codify some of the stuff that is set into that release changes doc. So like and then the idea here is that once we get to standard, the delta should be smaller. Like, you graduate the resource to V1, you graduate fields to standard, you update the documentation, and actually I haven't put the at least 3 things must have implemented it and be passing conformance. So yeah, like, a lot of this is about sort of, I really want part of what I want to do as part of us making these release changes is go through all of the release process docs, the get process docs, and make sure that people have like really clear deliverables to shoot for, right? Like, one of the things I think we've been doing is we've been erring on the side of like giving people deadlines, but we haven't never actually told people what you need to do by the deadline, right? Like, it's all relied on me or Rob or Shane or someone to actually tell you what you need to do. Oh no, you need to have done this. Sorry, like, we need to tell you, right? Like, and so again, in terms of us trying to get out of the way, the idea here is to make it be like, okay, here's the set of things you need to target, and if those things are done, then like, it should be a no-brainer to merge the things at each stage and for the things to proceed. So
Yeah,
again, yeah, you go, Rob.
No, I mean that update to the GEP overview was great and overdue, and I think it really helps transition well into this new way of thinking about releases. I do want to time box this. There are a couple other probably small things
Mhm.
on the agenda, but want to make sure we can get to them. Any last points we should discuss on this one? Cool. Okay.
The
Well,
the last thing I would say before we move, Rob, is just, yeah, Candace, I really, really, really appreciate all your feedback here. I think it's really super valuable. Like, it's really valuable to have someone be like, but what about this? What about this? It's actually, I know that like sometimes it can suck to feel like you're the one being the Dr. No, but like it's really valuable to have someone ask the questions so that, because a lot of the time we've thought about the answers, but we haven't written those answers down anywhere. And so having someone ask the questions means that we reminds us to write down answers. And if we haven't thought about it, then we think about it, right? So like, please don't stop asking questions like that. It's really important, and I really, really appreciate everything you're doing here.
Huge plus one. Yeah. Thank you, Candace. Really good feedback, and yeah, please keep it coming. Yeah. Cool. On that note, Candace, you did have one other thing which I think is also very relevant.
Yeah, it's related. So right now we're talking in our Gateway API small team outside of this team, our downstream Gateway API team, and trying to figure out, so what are the things that we want to work on for release 1.5? Are we even going to have a release 1.5? Like, how do we know which things, when we organize as a team, we're trying to pick out things that, that we know we can commit to. We're trying to also pick out things that are important to us, of course. And how do we know which of the features that we might have recommended are going to be chosen, or like what's going to happen if there are, let's just say there are 9 provisional GEPs ready in 2 weeks. What happens then?
Yeah. So this is a doc that is far less polished than Flynn's doc, but it has some rough ideas from me about releases and things. And one of the things that I think I'm partial about this, rough doc is this little diagram that I hope helps illustrate what could happen. These are not like, I don't know, right? Like these version numbers are going to be different. I think we ended up with monthly 25, 10, something, I don't know, in that ballpark. But just, bear with me for a second. What the key takeaway is if we're just going to have monthly releases, we're also going to have very regular standard stable releases. And whatever has met the bar at that point is going to be part of that release, and whatever hasn't is not. That's it. So what this means is instead of, constantly extending the date for releases, I hope this will get us even to a more predictable release cadence. I think Flynn's doc, let me clarify here. I think he still is saying, this talks about, yeah, okay. Next standard channel release is planned for January. I don't know if January, I mean, that also lines up with my timeline here. If our first monthly release doesn't happen till November, then our next stable release probably doesn't happen till February. But the idea would be to have stable releases every 4 months. And what this means for your team, if you're trying to get things into Gateway API, I think this is kind of the big highlight, at least for me, is if you propose something here, and if that thing has a happy path to GA, so for example, it's a relatively small thing or relatively non-controversial thing, then that means it's, likely 7 months away from being, feasible to get it into GA, or 6 months or 8 months, or, depending on where you land in this cycle. But any of those is way faster than anything we've done previously where, most things take over a year to go from experimental to GA and Gateway API. And I think this is one of the benefits of this approach is it really speeds that up, or speeds up the happy path at least.
So when does the next release feature consideration end?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, your actual question. I think basically immediately. So basic, to be clear, there are many trains now, right? So if, you know, our next monthly release is going to depend on when we have all the machinery ready to go. Flynn is still hoping that's October. I am a bit more pessimistic in thinking that it could slip till November. We'll see. It should be sometime in October or November. I expect we will have a monthly release out and moving. Uh, After that point, it will depend how quickly, but basically anything, it's fair game. If you want to submit a provisional GEP, go for it. If that, just everything just keeps on moving and a monthly release is really just tagging main. There's no, this is just free form. If it's ready, it's part of the release. That's it. There's no additional thought to it.
Yeah, and then the GA release is actually only the standard release, right? Like we're not.
Yeah.
So if you want to implement experimental things, you just do it based off a monthly release, and then the GA release will sort of move new things to GA or pick up any things that have moved to GA in the meantime and be the sort of the official release. And those go types will include the experimental stuff in the go types, as well. Everything that's in main up to that point in experimental will be included in that standard release, right? Like so, the reason it's a bit hard to answer that is because like part of what we're doing here is removing the sort of the feature consideration thing, right? Like it's like if you want features to be included, if you want to know what you should work on, then you work on things, right? Like and make them happen. And then you need to be keeping an eye on what's happening, and what gaps are in experimental, and you can implement those things. It's a little bit more weird because it's more flexible, and obviously it's going to take a bit of practice for us all to know how to do that. But like part of the whole point of this is to sort of remove we have to have a big argument about exactly what's going to be in experimental in the next release. And experimental is just whatever met the criteria to be an experimental in the next release.
Just one last comment. It makes it difficult for us to plan as consumers of Gateway API. Really difficult for us to plan.
Well, that's actually very much counter to the point of this. We're hoping to make it easier to plan, so it'd be helpful to hear more about what specifically makes this challenging.
So, one question right now is what's going to be in 1.5? We have no idea, right?
Yeah. It's entirely, if you have something like you want to support or something that you want to lead, you likely have a very strong case for it being in 1.5, for example, right? Like this gives you a clearer path to having something in a release, I would say. I think the calculus changes a bit. Instead of it being, can I get enough upvotes? It's, can I find 2 other implementations that also want the same thing I want? that's, you know, that's it.
So yeah, like, and I guess the question that I would ask is like, what was it that you were looking for in the 1.5 releases? Were you looking for things to be in experimental or things to be in standard? Because like, the things that are going to be in standard probably won't be much different to what you would expect, right? Like, like the things that we are proposing to move forward to standard in the 1.5 timeframe are TLS route, and sort of clean up TLS route and reference grant. And those are sort of the only two things that we have as sort of candidates for standard at the moment. But that's because no one's actually said, hey, I want to move this forward to standard. Not because we don't have things that we couldn't move to standard, right? Like, it's kind of like,
But
I
how
think
did you know that? I mean, how did you know which
because
things?
those are the things that I want to move, that I'm going to move forward to standard. That's the only way that I know that, right? Like, yeah, like, so, yeah, like but and those are cleanup things, right? Like, those are cleanup things. Like, TLS route is like, is a really good example of what happens when we don't move things forward and we don't remove things.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of standard enough that like a lot of people are using it anyway, even though it's still experimental. And so moving it to standard is like, hey, we're just going to accept the reality here that this has been around for long enough that it's effectively standard already. And reference grant, we were hoping to push that upstream more, but that hasn't happened. So moving reference grant to standard is a matter of updating Go types. That's really it, right? Like, it's standard already, effectively. It's just that we never moved. It's in V1 Beta 1. It's the only thing we have in V1 Beta 1. And so moving it to standard is like tidying up, right? So those two things are really kind of tidying up things. But I think that the real answer here is we don't know how to be able to tell people what's in standard. I think that probably it's going to be more important for us to have some other ways of tracking that. I mean, now that Ricardo has automated the top generation, we have some sample code that would help us like be able to generate a here's what's currently in experimental page on the website, right? Or something. So that would be the place. Or maybe we need to make it so that, GEPs get labeled with the stage that they are currently at, so that you can have a filter that tells you everything that's in experimental and or standard today. I don't know. Like, I think that it's a very fair question that we haven't answered as part of this change is, how does someone who doesn't know, who isn't intimately involved in the community know the status of all of the GEPs, right? Like that, I think that feels like the thing that you're really asking for here. Is that a fair thing to say? That what you're really asking for is, I would like, as an implementer, I would like to know what things are, will make, what things are, what the state of GEPs currently, and what features are being proposed to move to standard or to experimental in the next minor release.
Yeah,
Is
or
that
you have like 3 people on your team who work on Gateway API, and you have to tell the upper management how much time they need to spend on Gateway API, let's say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Um,
sure.
But anyways, so
Yeah,
I'm
no, I think
done.
that's entirely reasonable. Like, yes, so thank you for the feedback.
Cool. Okay. I think that's worth more discussion, but I do just want to throw out an FYI here in the last minute or two. This is a project that is related to but distinct from Gateway API. A proposal for agentic networking. If you look at the list of names that are co-authoring this, you'll see a lot of overlap with people that are working on Gateway API. It's a small community. This is not meant to be an exclusive list. These are just the folks that have volunteered to be part of the project so far and want to be co-authors of the proposal. And what this is basically describing is a way to handle what we're calling agentic networking, but basically aware of a new form of protocols. Those include MCP, UTCP, which is like all these tool-based protocols, agent to agent, A2A protocol, So there's a bunch of new protocols in this space. And the simplest way I could define it is basically putting some guardrails and controls around communication between agents and agents and tools. And those same APIs should be applicable whether the traffic is coming into a cluster, staying within a cluster, or going outside a cluster. So that's like a very, very high level view of the world. If you're interested in being involved, Jeff, definitely reach out. First meeting is scheduled for Thursday, but this is still very, very early days. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now. But just FYI, want to build a big tent here. So if folks are interested in this area, don't hesitate to reach out. Want to include as many people as are interested. Yeah, I'll leave it there. And with that, we have gone past the end of time for this meeting. So thanks all for great discussion today, and we'll see everyone around. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.